What is the cause of suffering? Today's talk is going to be about Buddha Dharma, the source of Buddha Dharma, and why the Buddha talked more about suffering than Brahma or Shiva or Vishnu. This is Satsang with Karma Yeshe. I took refuge in the Buddha Dharma and I studied with Robert Jinson Kennedy Roshi as well as John Daido Lori Roshi, two Zen masters. And also I took refuge with Barutoko Rinpoche. I've been practicing the Buddha Dharma and studied yoga as well with Baba Haridas. So my experience with these teachers and experience in my own life is where I'm speaking from. Now, the cause of suffering the Buddha talked about as being avidya. Avidya means ignorance, which is twofold. One side being aversion, the other side being clinging. Clinging and aversion. Life is dukkha. Dukkha is suffering. The cause of dukkha is avidya. Avidya is ignorance. He spoke of the discriminatory mind and how the discriminatory mind is always choosing good, bad, or reacting to the world, rather. You see, we see, taste, touch, hear, and smell, and think. We have five senses, and we take in that information, and our mind interprets it. We analyze, evaluate, determine, judge, and that's the discriminatory awareness. Much of what I talk about is going to be more of an American experience of Dharma, of truth. Because a lot of these teachings have the cultural garb of Tibet or the cultural garb of ancient India or Japan or China. And we confuse the culture for the wisdom. Much of Zen is talking about prajna, direct perception of one's true nature, of original mind, of Shunyata. But all Buddha Dharma ultimately has its roots in the yoga. The yogas in the Vedas, even Tantra, the Vajrayana, all come from the Vedas. So ultimately we must talk about the path of yoga because the Buddha did practice yoga before he sat underneath the Bodhi tree for 7 days and 7 nights. And all of these practices contributed towards his enlightenment, towards his experience of Nirvana. In his teachings, he primarily spoke about overcoming suffering. When he was asked, "Is there a God?" It is written that he responded, "I have found no such eternal, unchanging being that could be called creator." And many people interpret that as him saying that there is no creator. He was not concerned with the existence of a creator or non-existence. He was only concerned with overcoming suffering. So all of his teachings were concerned about overcoming suffering. Because in Nirvana, in no mind, in Shunyata, there is no suffering. Suffering only exists in the mind. Discriminatory awareness, cognition, and perception of the five senses. This is what comprises our basic human experience. Much of our culture is visual based. I know I'm visual based. I really love to see things. And most of our information that we gather is through our eyes. That's perception, eye consciousness. We think about, we evaluate, we determine, we judge, we analyze, we assess everything we see. That's the activity of the mind. That's the mind activity. When we become observant of the mind activity, how we think, what we think, the nature of our thoughts and feelings. Because we have an inherent value system as a human being. As a human being, we ultimately gravitate. We live in discriminatory awareness. We're always going to gravitate towards that which is soothing, comfortable and pleasurable, and have an aversion towards pain and discomfort, difficulties, overwhelming challenges. Thus is the human experience is basic suffering. To simply be human is to suffer. You may find this talk boring. That sense of boredom is the basic suffering of existence. This is what the Buddha was referring to about perception and mind. It is ascribed in yoga about the five senses. There's all these Sanskrit words used to describe the human experience and the construct of the mind. But really our thoughts and feelings are interwoven. And when you have subjective thinking, that is the discriminatory awareness, what it means to me, what I like and what I don't like, what I prefer, what I don't prefer. That's discriminatory awareness. We call it intellect, intellectualism. Jnani, the yoga of knowing. What does it mean to know? We get attached to viewpoints, even the viewpoint of Shunyata, because it's conceptual. When we get stuck in a conceptual mind, it is merely more a thought construct tied in with emotions that make us feel good to think. That is still mind. We have not attained no mind, or nirvana. What is nirvana? Nirvana literally means the cessation of thoughts, feelings, and perception and cognition and discriminatory awareness. The world beyond the mind. In fact, the word Buddha has been interpreted as awake, but what it literally means is above intellect. A state of consciousness above discriminatory awareness. Purified cognition. That is Shunyata. To comprehend, and just comprehend, nothing more, nothing less, because it's present moment awareness. We're not going to destroy our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin, and stop feeling, and stop seeing, and stop perceiving. No mind is not the existence of mind. It is merely shifting your perspective point. A perspective point beyond thought, beyond discrimination, beyond intellect, above intellect. Some people call it your higher self. Now, that's another concept. It's another mental conception. It's not really your higher self, it's merely your idea of your higher self. You see, we have ideas and stories about what we see, taste, touch, hear, and smell. And often we confuse that story about life to be life itself, when in fact it is just a story about life. It is our mind. And we identify with the patterns of the mind, survival patterns, strategies to survive, and we define that as ourself. That is the basic ego, the basic identity. And we all have that personal identity. It is something natural and inherent to be human. We have an individual perspective point. So what am I getting at with here? To really know the Dharma, we must not confuse the culture, the language of that culture, of understanding consciousness and truth. Truth is not derived through logical deduction or induction. It is experienced. In the practice of meditation, you seek to experience, to calm the mind, to still the mind, and to expand consciousness after you have calmed and focused your mind. When you understand how your mind is working, how you are reacting at a mental level and emotional level, there's an emotional and mental reaction to what you see, taste, touch, hear, and smell. That is why much of meditation is to shut down the senses, to go within, to sit as I am sitting, and to close your eyes halfway. So you don't focus on your senses and you focus what's going on inside. Bodhicitta, the wisdom mind. Bodhi is wisdom, citta is mind. The wisdom mind It's actually a chakra between the heart chakra and the solar plexus chakra, right at the base of right at the bottom of the sternum, the xiphoid process here. That is a secret chakra which connects to the crown chakra. The Buddha also studied Kriya Yoga, the path of Kundalini awakening. It's not just studying Jnana Yoga, the yoga of knowing, and studying the intellect and how the cognition works, the mechanisms of mind and how we comprehend things through inductive and deductive reasoning, how we have emotional responses, how we have sentiments of we like and dislike things please us, things displease us. But subtle energy pathways of our multidimensional self. We are multidimensional beings. And we have aspects of ourself that goes beyond intellect, goes beyond just physical. But the gateways to those states of consciousness are within the body. Only through the body, within the body, do we gain access. Hence we shut down our five senses. When you get into the tantras work with your five senses, sensory experience, and how the mind reacts emotionally. There's an emotion to each sense. And how the mind utilizes these emotions to create fulfillment, satisfaction, happiness, joy, and different emotional states, including anger and rage, lust and greed, gluttony, and always wanting to eat, probably the loudest desire of all. And how these desires can really wreak havoc upon our lives. And working with these desires by sublimating them, by focusing them into the heart chakra. Because these are all lower nature chakras, the bottom three chakras. When we're able to take the energies of lust, greed, anger, hatred, and transmute them into compassion, into kindness, into generosity, into clarity, then you understand the meaning of the Vajrayana. These different aspects of the Buddha Dharma can be confusing. What did the Buddha teach? What is his path to overcoming suffering? There's three schools, the Hinayana, Mahayana, and Vajrayana. What are these three schools? The Buddha actually talked about three schools? I went to Goenka's meditation retreat, and that felt the most genuine, authentic Dharma, as what the actual Siddhartha Gautama taught. There's something very simple. This golden energy, a real love and compassion there. No need for ritual, no austere. I mean, it is pretty austere. And you have the Zen practice. What is this koan practice? What is this counting the breath? Staring at a wall. Came from Bodhidharma when he went to China and observed some Taoist monks. And he sat in front of a brick wall for seven years. He kept falling asleep and cut his eyelids off. And as soon as they hit the ground, they turned into tea leaves. And you realized I didn't need to cut my eyelids. I could have drank a couple cups of tea. A cup of tea would have kept me awake. There's no need for these austere, severe austere practices, which is very popular at that time period, both in India and in China. Devotees would chop their legs off to meet Shiva. Stand on one leg for 5 years just to meet Shiva. There are all these purification practices, and this idea of purity and austerity often go hand in hand. But purity really means clarity, clear cognition, prajna. And that's what the wisdom mind is. And how to cultivate the wisdom mind, how to cultivate clarity. These passions often confuse us, delude our way of thinking, cause us to believe in things to be true that are not true. This is known as wrong viewpoint. We often argue and create much discord by arguing all the time over these viewpoints that we have, these opinions. Everybody's got one. So we understand Dharma within the American experience It's within context. We actually go into our own mind, utilizing the language of our time, which is primarily psychological, cognitive behavioral therapy. It gets really into how our thoughts influence our emotions. Rational emotional behavioral therapy gets really into an emotional value system of which we humans basically have. These rules we create for ourselves to meet our needs. It's a different kind of understanding in the Western mind, because the Western mind is based upon duality. We are inherently separate, God up there, man down here. Reincarnation, there is none. We just go to heaven or hell. Where you die, it's over. The concept of reincarnation is really absent in Western culture, where in ancient India, it was a very popular belief. The god Vishnu actually taught about reincarnation, how we get stuck in the wheel of death and rebirth, death and rebirth. How do you escape this wheel of death and rebirth? Through Nirvana. But is it about death and rebirth, or is it about the cycle of failure that we experience throughout life, of applying wrong viewpoint, of applying wrong skills and wrong technique, having misunderstanding, trying to create a life for ourselves, and failing, and going back to these winning strategies that work until they don't work, never really having any real understanding of anything, of ourselves, of the world. We just go around acting out and reacting to things rather than consciously living. The Buddha Dharma is really universal. It's about your own consciousness and your own mind. How does your mind work? What are the mechanisms? What's causing your confusion? What's causing your upset? How do you overcome those causes? Through focusing your mind. Authentic living, being honest, being genuine, committing to your word, having integrity. That's what the Eightfold Path is about, cultivating integrity. Because when you live in integrity, you find your mind is much more calm and clear. When you sit down and meditate, it's often easier to cultivate a focused mind when you're genuine and honest with yourself and have no hiccups with other people. You don't owe anybody anything, any apologies. You didn't cause upset in other people. There's no guilt. There's no shame. There's no anger towards anybody or towards yourself for making mistakes. Often guilt is a heavy form of suffering, resentful, regretting the past of mistakes we've made and being angry at ourselves and blaming others is often an experience of suffering that we have here in the Western world. Throughout all cultures, this phenomena has happened. It's just described differently, causing karma. I don't want to cause karma. I don't want to create more karma. Karma is cause, it really means action. For every action, there's an opposite but equal reaction. There's always a cause and effect nature to action. So understand action through speech. How we speak and how we behave and how we actually act in our body, what actions we take physically, is influenced by our thoughts. Our thoughts create emotions, our emotions drive actions, and our emotions drive words. To reactions. We take in what we see, taste, touch, hear, and smell, and we react to the world. With no understanding on why we react, how we react, the nature of our reaction. So what the Buddha Dharma is really about, what yoga is really about, it's about self-mastery. It's about understanding their mind activities and how to utilize them for what they really are. We're not supposed to create suffering. We're supposed to create success, results in life. You don't want to build a house that's doomed to fall because the foundation wasn't built right. Having understanding of things creates success, creates sustenance. Sustenance in the world. We're not born simply to die. Between birth and death, we have life. You experience a lot of things in life. How you live is dictated by the attitude, your outlook on life. Your outlook on life is dictated by what you think and how you think in your personal value system. If your personal value system is greedy and self-centered, you can't be trusted. You take from people. You might turn on people. It creates bad relationships with others. If your value system is caring, concerned, empathetic, honest, then you'll be trusted by other people. And if you're skillful, you can work with other people and create real community, real connections with people. And that's what's really fulfilling in life. But Buddha renounced civilization. The followers of Buddha shaved their heads, put on robes, and left civilization. There are stories of even modern American men leaving their families to go become a monk. A majority of monks leave the world because they can't survive. They can't make a living, and it's an easier life. They think it's an easier life. There's less responsibility in a monastery. We're talking today's time, not the Buddha's time. There are many monks who actually don't practice the Dharma. There are many yogis living in ashrams who actually don't practice the true, call them the precepts of yoga. Don't even believe in yoga. Don't even believe the goal of yoga. They just live there because it's pleasant. They're still living in discriminatory awareness, avoiding responsibility, avoiding accountability, taking the easy, pleasurable path in life. What the Buddha did, he never took the easy path. He often took the path that challenged him the most. He excelled in everything he did as a prince. He did the best he could at everything he did. He became very skillful. Skilled archer, skilled painter, skilled wrestler. Even had kids and a wife. So when he left, he already left with a certain kind of merit. A merit of not giving up, of having a positive attitude of I can do this. And I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to quit. No matter what. He was determined to find the cause of suffering. And he did. He practiced all the kriyas, which are practices to unlock Kundalini energy. The practice of meditation on the breath did not originate with him. It originated in yoga, in the Vedas. He took those practices and mastered them. He kept finding different techniques until he found the one that worked for him. Meditation on the breath. And has worked for so many others. But of all the schools of the Buddha Dharma, there is no greater school than the school of Zen that has produced so many awakened ones through the practice of prajna, one-pointedness, and allowing the mind to still and calm itself. Like a glass of water, the more you try to stir it, the more muddy it becomes. Let the glass of muddy water just sit there, and the mud will settle to the bottom, and the clear water will appear by itself. And ultimately, there is no water, no glass, no mud. Only consciousness. What is the face you've had? The face you had before you were born. Thank you. This is Karma Yeshe, and sitting in Satsang.